In today's episode of the Photo Nerds podcast, we're talking photography tips. Gary and I disagree on pretty much everything. Paul sits on the fence, and we talk about our favourite piece of photography gear.
So, top tips.
Photography tips.
Have you got a top photography tip, Gary? What's your number one?
Well, you've just brought a vlog out, haven't you? Which talks about tips which were actually other people's.
I've got one that I fail to understand how people still make the same mistake over and over again. I do a lot of critiquing of work on my Facebook page, and
Brave
not
man.
a bugbear, but it's just the one thing I just don't quite understand, and that's when people produce images that are overexposed. So a classic example is a sunrise, sunset, shooting into the sun, but there's a massive part of the sky that's completely overexposed. Completely overexposed, and that and I just can't get my head around that. I just don't understand why they're still happy to produce work like that. And the way I look at it is simply this: if you pay for,
Are you talking about when it's purposely they've blown the highlights on purpose? Is that...
No. They just, because they're shooting into the sun, they naturally assume half the sky is blown.
That is what I'd get onto, because you're talking about the technical aspect, whereas that is an artistic aspect. But carry on, Gary.
So how I look at it is this: is if you were to commission a painter to sit down and paint a particular view, even if the sky is super bright and overexposed, they're not going to paint an overexposed sky. They're always going to paint detail in the sky. And not only that, but as a human being, you can't see anything that's overexposed. You can't. It's physically impossible. So why do we accept it in photographs? I just don't understand it. So all I would say was a good tip is just always expose for the highlights. And if there's too much of a variation between the highlights and the lowlights, then use filters. It's that simple.
Or bracketing.
Or bracketing, of course, yes. Yeah, you prefer to bracket, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I had someone ask me about it again the other day. I'm reluctant to get tied up in the sort of argument between filters and bracketing now, because you just do what you think is best for you. But I'm a big proponent of bracketing over using grads. I'm talking.
I agree with freedom of choice, but you know filters are better, don't you?
Yeah.
Let's have a vote.
Yeah.
Filters or bracketing?
Either or, to me. It depends on the situation.
Why don't you?
Well, no, if it's blowing a hoolie, I'm not going to get with filters out. I'm going to bracket.
I like that. I agree with your right to think whatever you want, but you're wrong.
Yeah. And I'm going to, as usual, sit on the fence and play devil's advocate and say both. I mean, you're talking about a technical aspect to that, which is a top tip that's turned into a critique, which is a valid critique. But, for example, there are certain times artistically where you may not expose for the highlights, such as a high key shot, for example. So
it's very popular in terms of
black or white high key shot where it doesn't matter what the sky's doing.
But that's very restrictive. The styles of photography.
Yeah.
I mean, street photography, yes.
Yeah.
If you want to take a silhouette where there's nothing but white and black in the frame, then that's different. That's very specialised.
But
I'm
even
talking
in
about landscape
certain genres of landscape photography, you can take a high key shot where you've got. I've done it in snow, for example, where I've naturally overexposed the image. I'm going to overexpose it anyway by a shot and a half for metering.
But you are.
I think the one way where it does work to overexpose is, say, if you're doing a long exposure at the beach on a cloudy day and you're shooting some groins or something, you might overexpose the sea and the sky to create negative space onto the groins. But there is also that genre of photography now which seems to be very prevalent on Instagram, where they're purposely blowing out, shooting into the sun and purposely blowing out the highlights. You see it a lot on these drone photographs from high up, and you've got the really overexposed sky with flare coming into the lens, and it seems to be a subgenre of landscape photography that does really well on Instagram.
I think if it's done purposefully and in a controlled manner, that's fine.
Yeah. I got what you mean now.
I just think when people produce images where part of the sky is missing because it's overexposed is unacceptable. But yes, if you're doing a style of photography where you're shooting into the sun and you want flare coming from the sun, wedding photography, there's an awful lot of that nowadays, all very wishy-washy, and I mean, I hate it. I just think it's disgraceful. To me, it looks like a mistake.
Don't hold back.
I just honestly think it looks like a mistake. To me, you should always have pixels.
Yeah.
I agree with you a bit less forcefully. It's that kind of very soft look, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
Desaturated.
I mean,
soft-
you're
soft
talking
look.
about shots. I mean, there are shots, and I've done it, that I've shot. For example, I like shooting backlit, and I've had periods where there has been the sun, and there's no amount of grad or filtering is going to not have a pinpoint area that is going to have no pixels in it. It'll be a small, tiny area, and it won't be, for example, clouds and stuff like that. But there is certain areas, and as long as it doesn't affect the overall balance of the shot, I haven't got a problem with it.
But
What you're talking about, though, I think you're talking about when you get an overexposed sky and 60% of the clouds are dead pixels, i.e., they're just there's nothing there.
Yeah, but a painter doesn't paint anything that's overexposed
They
because
do.
it's unacceptable.
They do, because I used to oil paint, and so when I used to do my sons, for example, there was a centre of for example, the sun, which didn't have any colour on it at all. It did have colour, and I'm contradicting myself, because what you do is you put a wash on the canvas. So I'd put a white wash on the canvas, but there would be a centre, a little smidgen of the sun that would be dead space, if you like, and I would paint around that, and that's what I'm talking about. Is sometimes on some of my images you'll see that.
Yeah, you are right though, because the kind of it's the importance of either using filters or doing post processing to put in a grad is that you're matching what your eyes and your brain saw, because your eyes are essentially the camera, and your brain is the chip in your camera, but it's infinitely more powerful than the chip in your camera, so it balances the exposure, even in situations with a very high dynamic range. Your brain will display that image for you perfectly exposed, and that's what you're trying to and personally that's what I'm trying to reproduce with my camera through the use of bracketing.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Gary. All I'm saying is I don't think there's going to be very many times where people are going to shoot backlit into the sun, and you're talking about images where people are shooting where that's not going to occur, and the sky's blowing out, aren't you? But I've definitely used negative space a lot in certain shots, and those high key shots.
No, there's nothing wrong with negative space.
But that negative space, you could class it as overexposed because I couldn't pull anything back. It's white space. It's dead space.
You do have to be very careful with exposure across the frame, though.
Yeah.
I think if you want to have a shot that people are going to like, particularly with, I mean, it was interesting actually, because I was doing a critique on a tour recently, and this chap, really great guy, showed one single image, and it had that slightly classic HDR feel, which I'm not a massive fan of, where you basically, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a HDR image, it's just what you do in post-production, but where you bring in the shadows up almost higher than the highlights sometimes, and it creates that kind of, I find it a bit unpleasant sometimes to look at. It feels unnatural because the ground is always darker than the sky, even in dull conditions, usually, unless there's snow on the ground. So I find that quite difficult, particularly when people darken the sky too much without it purposely being like that. But the thing is, this single image I wasn't a bit of a particular fan of, and that was my critique basically. The shadows were too high in terms of the highlights. But then all of his images were like that. And then as an overall body of work, it really worked because it was a very particular style to this guy.
Yeah. And it was his signature style.
It was his signature style, and it really worked because his compositions were great, and he took a lot of images, and he had a real big catalogue of images that were all processed in this particular way, and it just worked. So I think even when we're dishing out critique, there are times when something else or something different works really well, and I think that was an example.
I mean, that was interesting. I mean, you're mentioning tips, something that I've learned and I've been guilty of is in post-processing is less is more, in my opinion. I don't have a problem with how people's images are if they personally like them, but what you can see with certain images is when people have gone to town on the sliders in Lightroom. And it's something that we all do when we start out, particularly in digital photography, and I'm guilty of it, is that we think, oh, it'll be great. And you see those skies, number one, that they've obviously had a harsh ND grad put on in Lightroom. And so you can see a really dark sky, but it's an obviously ND gradded sky. And then also...
I think you can get around that by just... that happens when when you draw the grad in too small.
Yes.
So the gradient is not long enough. So
No.
just by dragging the gradient
all the way
out,
down.
you can
make
that.
it more natural, or pulling it off to one side so part of the sky's darker. And the other thing is the highlight slider on Lightroom. People will have what is a nice natural sunset. They whack the highlight slider to the left hand side and make this strange orange, obviously post-processed sky, and you'll find that when the light's right, that you can create subtle images. I mean, I don't know what you guys are like, but I don't know whether it's the Nikon sensor or what, but I have a tendency to desaturate quite a few of my images because they do come out naturally quite saturated, but very rarely, if at all, will I take the saturation slider up to the right. But,
I'm like that.
Yeah. I do. I do on certain colours, Adam. So, for example, one of my shots the other day, I wanted to just highlight the greens a little bit and then increase the saturation on the greens ever so slightly. But I think some of the most natural shots, you really don't have to do a lot in post production to get. I always call it post production, post processing. So just try to possibly see what the image looks like in your eye after a couple of days of it being in the computer, and come back after a couple of days, because that's another good one, is leave it a couple of days before you actually look at it, because I rush home, put it into my computer and think they're awful, and it's not until 2 days later that I think actually that's not bad. And then don't go overboard with your sliders. Just if you want to do something big, try and be a little bit more subtle with it.
It really depends on the style that you're going for as well, though, doesn't it? Because I think one of the videos I did recently was about sort of how we're deceiving people with our post-processing. And the reason I made that video was because of a particular shot that I did where I've cloned quite a large area of the image, which essentially made this little Tarn Lake thing bigger than it actually was. And it goes against my style. I'm not saying my overall way of shooting landscape photography. I'm not saying it's right.
That was in one of your recent vlogs, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not saying my style is correct. It's just the way I want to do landscape photography is to be as natural as possible. And that's why I made that video, because it had gone outside of what I would consider to be natural by making this lake bigger. But I think that applies to my processing of landscape photography as well. Is I'm trying, like you say, trying to be as subtle as possible to bring those images back up to just what I saw and what I felt at the time. But like I said, with that guy, he had a much more aggressive approach to post-processing, which overall, as a body of work, worked. Yeah. So I think it depends. But I think we're probably all quite similar in that we want to have natural-looking images to some extent. Well, you're a bit more ready to move things around in your landscape.
I do. Yeah.
But I mean, natural. There's natural and natural. Natural, as in you don't clone stuff out or put stuff in, or there's natural, as in you want to keep it as natural as possible, how it looks. I think that's where the blur becomes between people who really emphasise getting the shot as it was in camera, or some degree of artistic license. I've got to say, I sit on the fence there because I love.
You on the fence again?
I'm always on the fence. It's the safest place to be. You don't get bitten by ticks, but I like playing with images and seeing what I can get. And you mentioned the high key stuff. There's some guys that have done some awesome stuff where all you've got is a fence that goes up a mountainside, and that's it. And
between the three of us, you could be placed in a really powerful situation, because Adam and I never see eye to eye, so we could always turn to you for a deciding factor. So just think of the power that's in your hands right now.
No.
And what do we always get?
Judge.
Sitting on the fence.
Safest place to be.
Adam, have you got any tips?
I do, but yes.
Okay, moving on.
I had a really good You put me on the spot. I had a really good top tip, but it's gone out of my head now.
Brilliant.
You've only had 20 minutes to think about this, by the way,
I
Adam.
should have written it down. Like you write everything down, don't you? Yeah. Go on, you go. I'll think of it in a minute.
Let me give you another one. It's a bugbear of mine, and it's a real bug. And you mentioned earlier on about I move stuff around, and just as I was flicking through looking for examples, I've got a perfect example here that I'm going to show you. Things that really, really wind me up.
I remember my top tip now. By the way.
Have you remembered it?
Yeah.
Well, you have to wait now because I'm in full.
I've got
flow.
another one as well. So
yeah, so you're at the back of the queue again now. You had your chance and you blew it. When I critique work on my Facebook page all the time, I tell people I don't like things peeping into the frame.
Have you got a Facebook page, Gary?
Have I got a Facebook page?
Oh, yeah.
didn't know you had a Facebook page. Do you vlog? I think. But I know you've got one. Before you forget it, but just quickly, a good tip for me is, and it's Virgin on this as well, is experiment with your landscape photography, because you can go onto YouTube or you can get books and people teach you the technical aspects, which we can all agree you need that technical ability. But it's until you actually physically shoot images and realize that they don't work that that really teaches you something. So when I've gone out and I've wasted in the past 10 rolls of film and realised, well, that doesn't work, and that doesn't work. That's what's brought me on as a landscape tog, is realising what doesn't work. And if I didn't experiment, so let's say I just watched you, Gary, and I followed all your advice, then I will become a
worse photographer.
I'll become a Gary Goff.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so take some of the pointers, but go out.
I have to buy a shirt like this.
and change my accent. Go out and experiment. And if you come back with an image, and then you can think to yourself, oh, yeah, that worked, or that didn't work.
I agree, but that's more style than technical ability, isn't it?
Yes.
At the end of the day, the technical ability has to be right.
Yeah.
No matter what style
Absolutely.
or genre.
But technical ability, I think, is an easy thing to teach. Whereas relatively easy, whereas the experience of getting images that work on that artistic level, the only way that you're going to do that is by experimenting.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun to go out and experiment in different lighting conditions, because, you know, people say shoot sunsets and sunrises, and a lot of the vlogs are sunsets and sunrises, but you're missing out on other parts of the day that, for example, might not work particularly in the genre of photography that you're shooting. But I went out with a lad yesterday who's got an infrared camera, and it was really bright conditions, and where he was physically shooting would not work for typical landscape photography, and he was taking some infrared shots, which was a converted XT3, I think, and he got some lovely images. So, you know, have a play, because it's meant to be fun at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of ties in with what I was going to say, is that I think the one thing you can do is just up your shutter count, and not necessarily just with landscape photography as well. I think is that I talked about this as well quite recently, but it's about, if you are a landscape photographer, so you class yourself just as a landscape photographer, when you get out, your shutter count isn't that high. Even if you shoot as many shots as you might take on a landscape trip, you're not getting that shutter count up to the point where a portrait photographer is, or a street photographer is, where they're walking around London, say, and there's just subjects everywhere. Is there, like, you might go out on a landscape shoot and you might only see one subject. You might shoot it slightly differently and come away with 10 images, but it's still just one subject, isn't it? Even if you zoom in with a zoom lens or something. But so what I sort of said is that if you're a landscape photographer, you can improve your ability and your technical ability by shooting other things. Get that camera in hand, like we were saying earlier. Like, just get the camera in hand and start shooting everything. Just walk around with your camera and do a bit of street photography. Shoot images of your kids or your grandkids.
Oh, I see what you mean, right? Okay, yeah.
Just so you've always got that camera in hand.
Not just take more landscape pictures.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Like, just do everything.
Because you're the opposite to that, aren't you? You're pretty much the opposite to me when it comes to that.
I don't shoot many images on a landscape trip, but I do have the camera in hand, and I've obviously done weddings and stuff where that shutter count is always high. My shutter count has come down quite a lot recently, but I think just if you want to start shooting in manual, if you can do that in a street photography
with your eyes closed
setting, or a wedding setting, or a shooting your kids at home setting, by the time you end up in a landscape on the tripod, those manual controls are going to be
second nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And you're not even going to think about it.
No,
I think you're on the vein that you're talking about. Even with landscape photography, if you're a professional and you're doing it day in, day out, so you could be more selective with the locations that you're going to, because you're going to be going every day. But what worries me is people who go out and shoot landscape photography will pick a location, and I do think we touched on this in the past, and it's a 2-hour drive, and they go for a sunset. And they're waiting for hours for the sunset, which may or may not happen. Yeah. And then they're packing up and going home, and they get home and they're disappointed because either the shot don't look right or they didn't get the shot. Whereas for that 2 hours that you're waiting for sunset, there's so many intimate shots that you can be experimenting with, and different genres of shots, such as your high key shots, your black and white shots. And when you're doing that, A, you're having fun, B, you might get an image that you didn't think you were going to get anyway, which ends up on your wall, and C, you're learning the camera.
I think expectation is a part. Managing your own expectations is a part of that, isn't it? Because you get some clients on tours and workshops who expect you to control the weather.
Yes,
and it's just like you've got to, and then often if the weather is less than perfect, they're disappointed.
It's human nature.
I get it, but like, there's great shots to be had
anyway
in any conditions.
I think from a workshop point of view, I think that's a great asset for a teacher. Is all right. So we've gone to Bleetarn and we can't get the archetypal Bleetarn shot because the conditions aren't right. What else round here is that we can get a really nice shot of? Whether or not it's intimate or whether or not it's a reflection. Absolutely brilliant. But human nature, that's the problem with humans, is how many hobbies do you take up and you're no good at it, and then you think you're no good at it because you've not put the practice and the time in, or your expectations were a little bit too high, and then you give it up and you sell your stuff. Landscape photography, if you look at those images that are in books, that could have been, as we mentioned before, 15 years of somebody's work. Who is lucky enough to live in that location. Whereas if you can go out and you're not pinning all your hopes on the boathouse at Ullswater, and you can go and look for something a little bit different, you'll come away with something. I
am guilty of that as well, and it's what I've been thinking about recently is sort of getting the priorities right. So because I think within that mindset that person's in that you're talking about, and I do it a lot, I'm guilty of it, is I go out wanting to get a good picture. And that's my sole purpose almost for going out. And it doesn't always work like that. So what I was talking about recently is seeking out more adventure, even if it's just going for a walk and enjoying the outdoors. And eventually, if you do that enough in the time you have available, I know people have busy lives and work and stuff, but an hour after work, you go for a walk and take your camera with you. At some point,
you're going to get a shot.
You're going to come away with a good shot, aren't you? Because something's going to happen.
And you put that in your data bank, but that's where the experience comes in, because you say you might have just taken a snap. You get home and you think, well, I never thought about that, but that actually works. And then when you come to that experience again, you know that the shot's there.
And even if nothing happens, still take a shot. Absolutely. Because your expectations are low. See what the best you can make of that situation, because you're scouting, you're learning, and on the day that the conditions are right for that shot, you'll be ready and you won't miss it.
In the past, I've had people that have taken the mickey out of me on their vlogs. They've not mentioned me by name, but basically talked about, it's not a portfolio shot. It's not a portfolio shot. What I've tried to show on my shoots is that I'm not out for a portfolio shot every time. As long as I like it, then I'm happy. And it takes a lot of pressure off you, because you can go out and you're not necessarily going out just to shoot landscapes. You might be walking your dog or going out for a walk with the kids, and you're just taking the odd snap, and then you get an image that you're really proud of.
I think as people that share their process and vlog and document our efforts as landscape photographers, we almost have a responsibility to show some of the things that don't go right. Because if we're only ever presenting things that go perfectly and those grade A portfolio type images, it's not a true reflection of what we're doing, is it?
No. I don't do enough of that. I must admit.
I think the problem is what the expectations of the people who are watching are, and it is a breath of fresh air when somebody shows it how it really is.
I think you can still do it by being positive, and
Yeah.
not like, but you do come away with good images all the time. That's the point.
Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating.
Like, you're a good photographer. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so do you.
Thanks. I was waiting for you to say.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'll bull you, as well as sitting on the fence. I'll bull you both up.
Oh, I didn't realise you were saying you as in me. I thought you were just saying you as in the collective.
As in Gary Goff.
No, sorry. No, I didn't realise that. Sorry.
I was paying you a compliment, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
He was expecting one back. He didn't get it, so I gave him one.
Are you not used to it? Like, you don't get many compliments.
I massage their egos. It's the only reason I'm here, is to massage
What
their
you need
egos.
is your own Facebook page.
Yeah.
You got a Facebook.
You know, you want a middle initial. That's what you need, Adam.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And just have fun. That's
Any other tips? We're talking about
There's
tips.
lots of tips, isn't
Any
there? There's lots of
technical,
tips.
technical tips. I'll give you an example. Do you guys shoot in black and white?
yeah.
When you shoot in
Well,
black,
I shoot in black and white.
no,
convert them to
yeah.
black and white.
That's the question. Do you change the settings on your camera to see
makes-
what it looks like in black and white?
Pointless,
Oh
isn't
no,
it?
that's right. Because I don't. I just see, if I see it in my head in black and white. I'll be honest with you. That my favourite genre of photography is actually black and white, and I've not done any when I've vlogged. And the reason is, very little of it is in social media as well, whether or not it's whatever area you put it in, because I don't find it, on the whole, for landscape photography, a particularly popular genre.
What, black and white?
Black and white. It doesn't seem to sit well with a lot of people, but I love it.
I've got a number one tip. It has to be the number one tip. And the number one tip is, and I've just put together a tips video, and I actually thought I should start the video off by saying
but your
this.
number one tip was take your time, Gary.
No.
So have you got a new number one?
No, it wasn't my number one tip.
Was it
No,
not?
no, it wasn't my number one tip, no.
Well, what?
You see,
I've watched it last night, but I forgot.
Really? You've only watched it halfway through? No, shoot for you was my number one tip, which pretty much is what we've covered. Shoot for you.
Yeah.
Whether it's the style, the genre, or whatever, just shoot what you're interested in and forget anybody else that might, be critical of your work.
Yeah.
Shoot for you. Go out and enjoy yourself,
That's
basically,
it,
is what
yeah.
I was saying. But the number one tip has to be, is get off YouTube
Yeah.
and get outside with your camera.
I think that's
in
what-
other words,
Stop watching us. And get out,
stop watching.
Do you remember Why Don't You when it was a kid?
Yeah.
Get out and do something less
Yeah.
boring instead. Switch off the TV.
But-
I think you're right.
But
That's
quite
about
literally,
experiment.
in other words, if you think that anybody, any photographer could give you a tip that's going to make your photography better, apart from the obvious, right, then you're barking up the wrong tree. You really are, because those tips don't exist.
No.
Or you could listen to the Photo Nerds podcast whilst driving
Yeah,
to
and it'll
a
go in.
landscape photography.
It'll go in
location.
subliminally, so you won't realise it, but it'll be in there, and then you'll think, "Oh, I've thought of a really good tip." I mean, you mentioned in YouTube and tips. What I do see with a lot of tips is that they seem to be the same old, and they don't talk about the reasoning behind that tip, if you know what I mean. So, like, shoot with the wide open aperture when you're shooting in the woods.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean-
why? And for what reason? And I think that's a farce anyway, because it purely depends on what focal length you're shooting at as to what aperture you're going to shoot at anyway. So, it's if you're going to give a tip, then at least explain the reason why.
That's been my heavy focus recently on everything I've been doing around sort of teaching photography, is that yes, it is a technical exercise, isn't it, and of controlling your camera and stuff like that, but just trying to focus on the artistic side of it, which is what comes into the areas of composition and reasons for doing things, and it does. I mean, I don't want to sound pretentious or anything, but if you're just focusing on the technical skill, you're going to be limited, aren't you? There's only so far that can take you before you get to the same standard as everybody else. So
absolutely,
that's the key.
Having an individual sort of photographic personality, whether it's landscape or otherwise, you want to get in touch with a bit of your own creativity.
And I think that what we've done is we've all come to the same conclusion, but brought different tips out. For you was that shooting for yourself, and we're talking about experimenting, and don't be afraid. As long as it's technically working, don't be afraid to have your own artistic personality that's different to somebody else. Maybe you'll start off and you'll shoot more in the vein of Adam or Gary. But then what will happen as you start to evolve as a photographer, you'll naturally fall into what you enjoy shooting. And if you enjoy shooting it, I think this is the key. If you enjoy going out and shooting it, you'll carry on doing it, and you'll fall into your own style of shooting.
Yeah, but it's like when you mentioned about the technical aspect. Once you know, understand, and get a grip of the technical aspect, then what really is the difference between you and a master of landscape photography, the master? Well, the only difference is their portfolio will be different to yours because they've more than likely traveled the world. Because once you know how to take a good picture, once you know how to formulate a good composition, then really it's only the location that will ever differ. Isn't it? Yeah. So if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you could travel around the world and photograph these amazing things, then automatically you're going to seem like a much better photographer than the person who can only get out on the weekend. But realistically,
they're going
to be the same.
The thing that makes the difference between the master, as you say, and somebody else is experience and time. So that shows through, for example, in your work, Adam, and shows through in your work, Gary. Yeah, you could teach somebody the technical aspects in a workshop in a week, and you could go into a location, and because you've got this subliminal experience of what the light is doing and what it's telling you in your brain at a subconscious level, you'll get an image that's different to theirs, because the lighting conditions will be slightly different, or your composition will be slightly different. And that's what I'm talking about, experimenting. The best way to learn is by doing it, upping your shutter count, as you say, going out and shooting, seeing what works and what doesn't, because that's how your brain learns.
One tip is sort of along the lines of what you're both saying, is that when you're looking to master your photography or in any genre, is not seeing things as a single image. So like when you're putting your portfolio together, develop it purposefully in a way that images link together. So if you were to put images up in a gallery, or you're presenting it in a photo book or something, those images should tie together in some way by design, rather than complete fluke. Or
do you think that's what you're talking about is the style of the shoot? The shots, or as a theme running through the shots?
I think it can be either. Yeah. It could be a visual link. So like I have a series of images that are all shot with quite a blue tinge to them, and they link. Some of them are shot in snow or the sea. They link together really well
that's because you use leaf filters.
I don't use leaf filters.
In brackets.
Brackets. Sorry,
you're the filter man. I'm on the fence.
But they all have a very similar visual look. But you could also have the series of images could be very different looking.
Yeah.
But tied together by a singular story. I think so it's just about. But again, that would be by design rather than chance. And I think it's often overlooked. The portfolio is overlooked because we kind of focus so much on the individual image that then when we come to tie them together into something, it should be a really good portfolio will be something more than just a collection of individually brilliant images.
Has that camera stopped?
No, I don't think so.
No. Yeah, that's why if you want to present your work to a body of people to get letters after your name, for instance,
it's a different kettle of fish.
Then it's the same thing. It's not only presenting 20 images, it's presented 20 images that look well together. Yeah. In other words, there's a consistency, whether it's with lighting, with composition. At the end of the day, it's the bigger picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I know I've done that with wedding and portrait photography, and it's difficult to start going through your work, and all of a sudden, you end up getting really anal. You put pictures on a wall, then you start shuffling them around, and your body of work has to almost sit like one picture. Rules of thirds. There has to be something on the left looking into the right, something on the right looking into the left. The minute you start going against that, So you've got a portrait picture on the right with somebody looking out.
It looks wrong.
Right? It looks wrong when you're looking at your work as a body of work.
It's a really interesting exercise to go through as well. Like actually seeing how subconsciously your images might even link together by what you've shot over the last year.
It's interesting.
You'll find some. You'll probably if you do look at your own images over the last year, even if you shot them in isolation, you probably find on different shoots. You'll probably find that there is some link of style or something you've been doing similarly over the last.
Yeah,
I think you'll find that other people will comment on it. I've had a few comments that if they look at my images, good or bad, I'll shoot myself in the foot here. They'll say you can see your style in your shooting, and you might not see it, but maybe that's to do with what you like to shoot. I think it's more to do with how you post-process your images, to be honest.
Post-processing definitely has a big part.
I mean,
we can see your style in clothing anyway.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
For anybody driving in the car at the moment, Paul's actually turned up at the studio wearing hot pants.
Yeah, boating shoes. I'm going yachting afterwards. But,
bowling shoes?
Boating.
Oh, I thought you said bowling shoes.
Yeah, I'm going to go yachting.
Yeah, he kept them because they felt comfortable.
Felt comfortable, yeah. I've not got ankle socks on. Well, not ankle socks. I've not got knee-length white socks on, though.
So I think we've covered tips and a bit more. Shall we move on from tips?
What I think's been nice with the tips thing is we've not gone into you should be doing this and you must do that. I think they've been more generalised to hope that people will relax into shooting. Relax and enjoy it and do it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, we're not all landscape photographers, are we? Like I think there's people that listen to this that
maybe not.
That are not. Like, and certainly people I've had on my landscape tours and workshops, they're shooting lots of other stuff as well.
Lots of genres,
It's not just one thing. So yeah,
cool. Next topic.
Okay, glasses on because I'm old. This is an interesting one. Favorite gear. Whether it's old or whether it's new, what have you bought recently that blows your mind?
Blows my mind.
It's a difficult one, that really, isn't it?
What, for a photography point of view?
I've got one. I don't know if you want me to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, go for it.
But I've got one.
It's not your van.
No, it's just a different head on my tripod, and I can't believe how I ever manage without it. So I use a 3-axis tripod. I can't stand these ball head ones. It really frustrates me. Yeah. When you get everything lined up, but you just want to change just the horizon ever so slightly, and you undo it and it drops. So frustrating. That's just me. Nothing wrong with ball heads, by the way. And if you're a ball head user, nothing wrong with it.
I really like ball heads. I was getting frustrated at the 3-axis tripod.
I actually like both.
They're so convenient and quick.
I had to say that.
We should be married.
I had to say that. Yeah, you two would be great together, wouldn't you?
No, I've bought only because I've seen my mate using it, and I thought that's really cool. And it's an obvious thing, and it's a click lock. So in other words, if I want to move my horizon, I move the 3rd axis down there, and then I'm faced with a twist to fine tune it.
Right.
So I lock it to where I think it's roughly right, and then simply fine tune it. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. I've no idea how I've managed without it.
How much does that sucker weigh?
It's not light. And when I had to carry that up the old man of store, I think that's why maybe I took a bit longer than 40 minutes for no other reason apart from that.
Yeah, well, I didn't tell you. I had a Sherpa that carried all my gear up. And somebody to carry me up.
Jesus, yeah. And walking poles.
Yeah.
Walking poles.
Yeah.
If you don't own walking poles, buy walking poles.
Yeah, that is a top tip.
Top tip.
In my background, because of what I do for a job, I would highly recommend walking poles because they will preserve your knees.
That's why I started using them because I've got a bad back anyway. But apart from that, I want to be doing this for the next 50 years.
Yeah,
it's about longevity rather than anything that I don't particularly need them right now. But but they reduce the loads on the lower limbs.
I just use them because I'm old, fat, and unfit. That's all really.
Yeah, but they're great.
But, they really, really do help. No, but my tripod head, on a serious note, click lock, absolutely fantastic. Put it in place, any one of the 3 axes, and then simply fine tune it. And I just think it's brilliant. But obviously,
sounds good.
But your limitation with that is you could pretty much only use that for landscape photography. There's no movement apart, free movement with it apart from it locking in place.
It's expensive. it's heavy, and it's not very versatile. Is that what you're telling us?
But you love it.
But you,
And I'm going to put my small mirrorless camera on top of it.
Is that because you just dropped 200 quid on it, Gary?
No, I think it cost me £140 just for the head, and that was on an offer.
That's not bad.
On
Well,
Amazon.
who made it? Who makes it?
Manfrotto.
Manfrotto.
Yeah.
And what's it called?
Click lock head.
Cool.
I don't know. Should I have a
We'll
look at my
put
Amazon?
a link in the description.
Should I have a look at my Amazon account and have a look?
Yeah.
Where did I buy it from? Amazon?
we'll put Gary's affiliate link in the
Yeah.
in the description.
Oh, I haven't added that. Affiliate link. Yeah.
I think
that's me.
My I've had it for a while now, but the thing that has blown my mind, and it's not camera gear. The thing that's blown my mind is my down jacket. Like, it's literally changed my life. Like, of going out in cold weather, and particularly because if you're trekking anywhere, even if it's cold, you warm up. But then, as photographers, we then get to the location we want to go in the freezing cold conditions, and we just stand still for a while.
Yeah.
And you just lose all the heat that you've gained from the exercise you've just done. But the down jackets are just incredible. Like, even in the coldest of conditions, you can still be seriously comfortable. And I know it's like, if you're a lover of geese.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
a lot of them
one.
are sustainably sourced from food products.
I'm on my second down jacket, hydrophobic down, so if it gets wet to a point, it doesn't stop working. Because
They're amazing.
You just got to be careful with down, obviously, because even the hydrophobic down will get wet to a point, and then you're freezing your nuts off when you're up on a hill.
Yeah.
But they are cracking. I mean, people laugh at me, you saying favourite gear. My down hat has become synonymous with my vlogs. It's a big.
Is that a down
bumper.
hat?
It's
Is
a
it?
down
I
hat,
never knew that.
and it's supremely
Is that
warm.
why it looks so...
Yeah, it
Oh,
looks
I'd so love to comment
it
now.
looks like you can do, mate. Comment away. Tea cozy on my head, but honestly, it keeps you so warm. I could just wear a pair of Y fronts and
I've
just
got a
that,
down
and I'd be
jacket.
fine.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's a good brand one. But I find that down here there's lots of padding, but up here it's all gone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a cheap jacket
No.
either.
Are you sure? You didn't spend all your money on your
Cost me
tripod?
nearly $12.99.
What,
You know,
the
it wasn't-
down jacket?
Yeah, it wasn't a cheap jacket. I'm
Yeah.
telling you now. You can buy to put another affiliate link in.
I've just replaced my last down jacket. I just bought a Rab one.
Rab, that's it.
The
Yeah,
one
yeah,
before
Rab.
that was Burger
Mine was a
House.
Rab jacket. Good luck with that one.
Yeah. Oh no, it's great. The only problem with my old one is it was made out of a really light material because I thought I need to save 200 grams to go up the hills with.
Yeah, you think it's good now though. You wait till 12 years from now.
No, the new one's made out of Pertex.
Like,
materials.
when the winter hit last year, I put my jacket on that I'd worn all last year, and I couldn't get in. I literally couldn't zip it up.
Oh, really?
And it was for that reason that I
Started
quite quickly
losing
lost like a couple of stone. I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
how much weight have I put on over
I've
the
only
summer?
got about three sets pieces of clothes I can actually wear now.
Yeah.
Well, how much weight on the last couple of months, but that's another story. But my piece of equipment, before you both asked me, my favourite piece of equipment besides my down hat, I got sent a magnifier that sits that you can look at the screen on the back of your camera, and so you can see what the shot looks like properly. And somebody from America, and I've forgotten
What, an
his name.
eyepiece? You mean an eyepiece?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a square thing that goes over the back of the screen in the camera, and you can look, and it magnifies it, and you can see what it looks like to make sure everything's bob on. And it was certainly a lifesaver for the 800E, and I still use it for the 850. I know that you can zoom in and magnify it manually, but for something that costs about £8, it's a cracking little bit of
I
kit.
don't understand why you'd want one. I know a wedding photographer that uses it, and he takes pictures. Then all of a sudden, he's got it clipped around his neck at all times, and he put it on, and he's in there, and he's zooming, and he's like, "Why are you doing that?"
I don't know. It's like, why do I shoot Nikon? It's just that
that
what it
baffles
does.
me as well.
What it does is it just takes everything out, and all I'm concentrating on is that image. And it's like looking on your monitor at home, and it just emphasises to you, that composition looks right, and it looks nice, and it looks like a nice framed image.
It's one of the things that Charlie Waite says similar to that is he carries like a little card around with him that has a cutout, a frame cut out of it, and he'll use that and just hold it up to.
Well,
see
you see, that's obviously Charlie Waite is following
What does
my
he know?
advice because it's perfect.
What does he know?
I mean, I don't do that, but it's like
There's a hill,
helpful for
hill not far away from us, and they do it in the Lake District as well. And it's got a frame.
I have seen a few of them in North Yorkshire as well.
But that comes back from the Victorian era. So here's a little bit of useless information for you both if you didn't already know. But at the Lake District, they used to have viewing points, which were like little hides with a square, because obviously they didn't have landscape photographers back then, and they would pick. And people would take tours in Victorian era round to these viewing points, and they were around like Derwent and that, not Derwent, Windermere, and people would go and stand and look through it, and it was an old take on an iPhone.
So if you stood in a certain place and looked at the frame,
you saw
you're
that
literally
composition.
seeing that composition.
Yeah. So that's what I like, and I've forgotten the name of the blooming thing that you call it that looks on the back of the screen, but it didn't cost me a lot of money, and it's a cracking little bit of kit.
Yeah, no, I've literally seen a wedding photographer use it.
And
I'm
you
thinking,
thought, you're useless. What do you need that for? I'm Gary Goff and I ain't got one.
No, but while you're doing that, you're not taking pictures, and that really annoys me.
Yeah.
But not only that, but you're looking through the viewfinder.
Yeah.
Whilst looking through the viewfinder, what are you looking at? You're looking at your composition.
Because you don't like chimping, do you? Like,
No, but you're looking at your settings. You're looking what to focus on. Why do you then need to verify to check that I focus on the right thing? You've just done that yourself.
I know, it's just a nice little thing to do.
Do you shoot an entire wedding without looking at anything you've shot?
No, I'll do a test shot, and then I don't look at pictures. So if I'm going to take a groom against a window to do window-like photography, and then naturally do a test shot, well, I've got my light meter, so I'll take a light meter, take a test shot, make sure I'm happy with that, then I don't look again. Because the simple rule is, if the subject doesn't move relative to the light source and the light source doesn't change, don't look at your damn camera.
Yeah.
If you're shooting in manual.
No, you don't like you. So you don't.
You
like,
don't need to.
You don't like those little viewfinder things. You're not a fan. So if for Christmas, shall I buy you a down hat instead? Will you wear one?
Well, hang on a sec then. So now the power's in your hands, because I don't like them, and you do like them.
What, down hats?
No.
Well, he's not got one, so he's not going to
the
use
No,
it.
the viewfinder. Do you think it's a good
magnifying
idea?
glass.
The viewfinder. Would you use one?
Obviously
magnifying
not,
glass.
because he's not got one.
Don't sit on the fence.
It's not for stills, but I would for video. Yeah. Is that sitting on the fence?
For video.
I just like it.
handy for
You know what I
video.
like about it? It's cheap, and it makes a difference. You look, and you know when you put, you know what you're saying. Why am I doing it? Am I doing it really to improve what I'm doing? No, it's like when you put an image on a screen and you go, "Oh, that's nice." That's what it looks like. You feel like you're actually looking at it on the monitor. That's why I like it.
Another good bit of gear is that I like and use a lot is the
Adam's on a roll
An
now.
iPhone.
Adam's on a roll.
It's the little things that I like though. It's the Ordnance Survey app.
Yeah, it's cracking, isn't it?
Amazing. That just shows you can.
Have you got the pro version of it?
I think so. Yeah, it's like a £30 a year subscription or something.
You see,
isn't it?
the frustrating thing about the Ordnance Survey is for years, it cost you an absolute fortune. So there's a company called SatMap, and you download them onto little cards, or you buy them on cards, and they cost an absolute fortune. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, Ordnance Survey did something where they now do them dead cheap. So I bought an app called View Ranger, which used the Ordnance Survey, but paid an absolute premium for it, for little tiles of parts of the Lake District. And now, as you say, you can go on Ordnance Survey app, and you've got it all for £30 a year.
I like it's publicly owned as well as the Ordnance Survey, so it's good to support them.
But they're cracking to use, but nothing beats a paper map.
Apart from the Ordnance Survey app, if you've got a battery.
Absolutely.
Does it work if you don't have signal? If you don't have Genus?
As long as you download it beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
you
like
can-
Google Maps.
So if you know you're going to the Old Manor store or something, you're going to do a walk.
Yeah.
You download
You don't
it.
have a signal. You don't have. You know you're not going to have a signal. Just download. You can zoom in on the area that you're going to do.
Yeah.
Download it onto your phone, and then it just works with GPS while you're there. It's just saved me loads of times.
I can generally see where I'm going to photograph from the car park.
Can you?
Yeah. Just there. Can't walk too many paces. Find it difficult walking.
Not when
and
you're
talking
carrying
now.
that big heavy tripod head.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
That's why you keep buying heavy gear, to give yourself an excuse to not walk too far, isn't it?
I think you were at least your stuff was directly photography linked. Yours was more outdoor linked. Is there any outdoor photography gear, photography stuff that you've bought?
Yours was a coat and a hat.
Coat and a hat. That was he said.
Which is great for summer.
As he said,
And now summer's coming, everybody go and buy a down jacket.
as he said, a magnifying glass and a hat.
Good for starting fires on Inkley Moor. Is it you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, barbecue. Yeah.
It's not a barbecue.
But Marsden Moor was caused by a barbecue as well.
No, camera gear. That generally, yeah, it's obvious, isn't it? Waterproof camera. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Waterproof camera.
Yeah.
You know, what was the most useless bit of photography gear that you ever bought?
ND grads.
ND grads.
ND grads. Don't need them.
How do you manage if
They're completely
if you and I
unnecessary.
are out together
Yeah.
and I say, "Oh, I like that shot. That's quite good."
Yeah.
What's yours like, Adam? You can't show me how good that picture
don't
is on the
look at
back of
the-
your
you
camera.
don't-
No,
you
you
should-
can't because he gets a little magnifying glass on the back of the camera.
Did you show me the grossly
you just spent
underexposed one or the grossly overexposed? Which one do you show me?
But
Experience.
you just spent the last 5 minutes ranting that you shouldn't look at your camera.
Yeah.
And now you want to look at my camera.
No, landscape photography is lazy. Lazy landscape
I love
photographers.
it. Yeah. Just to diffuse this a little bit, I'm going to say my most useless bit of photography gear was a lens, a camera cover for rain.
Yeah.
It was awful. Now, I'm not. Some people are going to say, and I hope you do, is that you're going to say, right, I've got a brilliant top tip. Somebody mentioned a shower cap works really, really great. I think Andrew Marr mentioned it when he came over to this country, and it does. It works great. Or a plastic bag. But I thought, no, I'm going to buy one, and it was the most fiddly piece of rubbish that I've ever bought. I used it once.
What about a lens hood for a wide-angle lens? That's pointless, isn't it?
I'm quite surprised that nobody invents a big one, you know, for when it rains, because what really frustrates the hell out of me is when you're forever having to wipe your filters. Is that the same for you, Adam? When you're forever having to wipe your filters, or you're taking a 30-second exposure and you could see all the drops starting to appear, and you think, why hasn't somebody invented, like, say, just a lens hood, but one that goes over your filters?
It's called a hand.
Yeah.
An umbrella.
Possibly what they could do is they could incorporate a lens hood into a hat. So you've got both. So you could have a big hat
Don't they make those
on your
umbrellas?
head with a brim that you can take off and attach to the front.
You could, well, a sombrero. That could be your next.
That could be it.
Your next hat.
No, but how cool is it when you use your 70 to 200 mil lens, because the hood on the front is quite long.
It is,
and you can pretty
especially if it's raining as
yeah,
well.
you can use that
Right.
anytime, can't you?
Shall I let you into a secret? I've got my lens hoods, and 99% of the time I leave them at home
So do I.
because it's
Apart
just
from the-
another. It's just another faff
Yeah, but
for
when
me.
you don't use lens hoods in landscape photography.
no,
You can't because of all the filters that you
Yeah.
use.
Well, you can bracket.
You can bracket. It's still the same, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't, and I should, especially. In
The thing is, I'd accept that
circumstances.
as an argument, actually. If you said, no, the reason why is because I use a big lens hood, because then I can use it in inclement weather, and then I bracket because obviously I can't use
That's why
filters.
he does it.
Yeah, but that was a much better argument than just...
No, but they're unnecessary.
He didn't have an argument, did he?
You don't need them. You can reproduce it perfectly in
Okay.
post.
Well, before we wrap it up, I want to make a quick observation, if I may.
What?
Which
It's
is
not
quite
about my
funny,
art.
which isn't very good for anybody that's actually driving their car, but anybody who can see this now on YouTube.
He's looking at me.
Have you noticed that our microphones match us? So, for instance, I've got a James May top on, nice and silver, nice and grey in colour, and so is my microphone. Right? You've got a black...
I've got a big fat
Yeah, well, there
thing
you
on
go.
me,
right? And it's black and it matches your top.
and my hair.
Now, if you look at Adam's,
Well, I can't see a
All I'm
difference
gonna
between his muff
Yeah.
and his beard.
I'm trying to find out where his muff finishes
Yeah,
and his beard starts.
yeah.
You know what'll happen now then? If you start dyeing your beard, you're going to have to start dyeing that now to match.
What, his muff?
No, the theory the theory behind the beard is I get a little bit older and a bit more grey comes into it. Is that when I hit 40
Yeah.
and I've lost a bit more weight, it'll come off.
When
and,
you hit
and
40?
I'll look 30 again.
Yes.
And then it'll really look that
right?
you're quite a lot older than me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
after that.
Are you... You must be 40 now, surely.
No, it's 30.
38.
38.
Don't swear. Don't swear.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up on that?
Absolutely.
I think
He's only kidding.
We're at 59 minutes.
Perfect.
Awesome. So great podcast, even though it's been a laugh.
Yep, that's it.
So thanks for listening. Thanks
Yep.
for watching.
Comment, subscribe, like.
Yeah, more comments we get and more questions, so we can carry on doing these and answer what you want us to answer.
See you soon.